Wade here with my buddy Inkling, and today we're going to talk to you about the second principle of leave no trace, or at least I am, because she's a dog and she doesn't talk. And that second principle is travel and camp on durable surfaces. Now, why do we want to travel and camp on durable surfaces? Oh, I guess she's done being in the video. So why do we want to strive to travel and camp on durable surfaces? Well, every footstep and every tent lay has an impact on the ground beneath it. Some vegetation is really fragile and can take years to recover. There's living soil and microorganisms in the soil that can actually take decades to recover. So it's really important that we do our best to ensure that we do as little impact to these areas as possible. Additionally, we want to do our best to ensure that we can keep these areas as pristine as possible so that other people can enjoy a pristine wilderness experience, not just us. Does this mean that we can't go out and enjoy these wilderness areas? Of course not. There's just some things that we need to do to reduce our impact as we travel and camp. When we travel on durable surfaces, we can greatly reduce our impact. In areas with established trails, this means that we always use the trail. Single file, one at a time, center of the trail. Doesn't matter if it gets muddy, rocky, uneven, we always want to stay on the trail. Additionally, we want to make sure that we're never cutting any shortcuts, creating new trails, or blazing switchbacks up elevation. All these things can lead to erosion, which can really destroy the pristine beauty of an environment, not to mention be really detrimental to the flora and fauna that live there. Let's go ahead and look at some examples of good surfaces to travel on in areas where there are trails. This is a nice trail in Colorado, and you can see that it's well maintained and you just gotta stay to the center, even if you do have to step over some rocks. Here's a nice shot of Inkling walking down the center of a trail in Black Elk Wilderness. She's doing a real good job walking single file, one at a time. Here's another good shot of the pup on a nice stone trail, also in the Black Elk Wilderness. Remember, stone is super durable. Here's a trail that's got some mud and melted snow. Despite that, you still want to walk through the center. So your feet might get a little muddy, but it's going to reduce impact. And lastly, here's a nice gravel and stone trail out in Utah. There's fragile plant life on either side, so it's important to stick to the trail here. In addition to traveling on durable surfaces, it's also important to camp on durable surfaces as well, for many of the same reasons. Setting up a tent or a shelter can have a detrimental effect on plant life, animal life, and can lead to erosion issues in the future. Decisions about setting up your camp should include thinking about the amount and kind of use that the area sees, how fragile the soil and plant life might be, and the possibility of disturbing wildlife. In addition, you should think about any ways that you can reduce your impact while you're setting up your camp. You should always set up your camp or your shelter 200 feet away from any water source. And if the area sees frequent use, then your tent and kitchen area should be set up in spots that have already been impacted as opposed to creating new impacts. So look for spots where it's obvious tents have been placed, and if you find those, go ahead and set your camp up there. And make sure that when you leave your camp, that you're leaving that area better than you found it. When camping in less impacted areas, try to establish your camp on surfaces like rock, sand, or gravel because they can tolerate a lot of impact. When you're winter camping, establishing shelter on top of the snow can prevent impact to vegetation below it, and it leaves only a temporary visual impact for other visitors. If establishing camp on vegetation is necessary, dry grasses are often your best bet because they can be very resistant to impact. But really, camping on any vegetation should be temporary for only a night or two at the most. Living soil, which is found in desert environments, is incredibly fragile and should be avoided unless absolutely necessary. And the same thing goes for alpine vegetation. Let's take a moment and look at a few areas that are suitable for setting up camp. This is a good spot because it's in a designated site. You can see that the impact is limited to the area where the tent is set up. This clearing may not be perfect, but the dry grasses there will bounce back pretty quickly, so you could set up a tent for a night or two, no problem. This spot looks awesome, and what a view. And actually the ground doesn't look too bad, but since it's so close to water, this wouldn't be suitable for a campsite. Here's a good mountain backpacking camp. The tent is set up on loose rocks and gravel. And by the way, that fire's in a pre-existing ring. In the case of hiking off trail, everyone should keep in mind both the durability of the surface they're walking on and the frequency of impact to it. Just as the case with camping, rock, sand, and gravel are durable and can handle frequent and repeated use. Ice and snow, if they can be safely traversed, really usually show only a temporary impact in most locations. When it comes to hiking on vegetation, we should all exercise caution. While dry grass can resist trampling, repeated use can lead to damage, death, and eventual erosion. Other areas of vegetation, such as wet meadows, will really quickly deteriorate due to impact, so we want to avoid hiking through them if possible. Now during off-trail travel, we want to make sure that we spread out enough that we're not cutting a path single file like we would on a trail. This will cut down on potential erosion and will keep us from cutting a new trail through the area. And of course, we want to avoid traveling on a living soil or fragile alpine vegetation, as well as through any desert puddles or watering holes. Okay, let's look at a few good examples of surfaces that are durable to impact when traveling off trail. Stone is pretty durable, so if you have to travel across this country, that sandstone is going to make a good bet. Dry grass is pretty impact resistant, so this would be a good way to travel. Just make sure that you avoid any other plants and that you spread out to disperse your impact. This spot is less ideal because the grass is green and there's abundance of plant life, but if you needed to cross here you could. It's just even more important to disperse your impact. When traveling in winter, you can cross heavy snowpack with no problem, reducing the impact to vegetation below. This impact-resistant granite in the Yosemite backcountry is perfect for off-trail travel. To help us remember why it's important to reduce these impacts, let's do a little activity together. All you're going to need is a piece of rope or string that's about 4 or 5 feet long. Tie the two ends together so that it makes a big circle. You're also going to need something to write with and something to write on, and then we're going to head outside. So let's do it. Okay, now that we're outside, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our loop of rope or string and put it on the ground. Now that we've got our rope laid out in a circle on the ground, we're going to take the next 5 minutes and just survey that circle and write down every kind of life that we find in there. You don't have to get too detailed. I don't expect you to be a botanist, but if you find different grass, just note how many kinds, what kind of plants. You can be pretty general. Maybe you'll find some bugs or a spider. Just go ahead and write it all down. You can go ahead and pause the video while you work and come back and join us when you're done. So now that you've taken about 5 minutes to look and see all the kinds of life that you can find in your circle, how many did you find? I found a bunch. I found 3 different kinds of grasses, 4 different kinds of leafy plants, 3 insects, 1 worm thingy, and 1 dog ran in there, but she's not really a native species. How many did you find? I know, I can't hear you because this is a video, but go ahead and say it anyways because, well, why not? Some of the life that you found in your circle is probably pretty hardy and can stand up to a lot of impact. Some of the other life in your circle may be really fragile and have negative effects from any impact at all. Together, all these things create a balance, and that reflects the balance that we see out in the wild. The wild places where we go and recreate, they have a balance too. And enough impact will throw off that balance and can potentially lead to big problems. That's one of the reasons why it's important to travel and camp on durable surfaces. By reducing our impact, we can help these natural areas maintain their balance and reduce the likelihood that they're going to be damaged or that they're just not going to be places where we can go and play anymore. Nobody wants that. We've covered a lot of ground in just kind of a small period of time. So let's do a quick review quiz to see if it's all stuck upstairs for you, all right? So So let's get rolling. In an area that has trails, what do you think is the best course of travel? Is it A, B, or C? If you chose B, great job. Since you're in an area that has trails, it's important to stay on them and stay in the center. Now, if you're going to be camping, where do you think is the best place to set up? Is it A, B, or C? If you pick C, you're spot on. That grassy meadow wasn't a bad choice, but the dry gravel here is going to have the least amount of impact from your camp. Final question. If you're traveling in the backcountry in a pristine environment with no trails, what's the best course here? Is it A, B, or C? Great job if you picked C. Those dry grasses are not a bad choice because dry grass will stand up to a lot of punishment, but it just can't hold a candle to how durable granite is. Even though we can't completely remove our impact when we explore wilderness areas, we can do our best to reduce it to the least amount possible. And we can do this by being aware of what we're doing and taking every effort to diminish that impact. One of the best ways to do this when traveling and camping is to travel and camp on durable surfaces. And remember what Inkling has to say about it. Don't be a buttface. Remember to leave no trace.